Hello everyone, welcome to Miss Doc T. This is Dr. Farheen, General Medicine Resident, and today let's discuss mitral regurgitation. So we'll start by looking at a four-chambered view of heart. The deoxygenated blood reaches the right atrium and then through the tricuspid valve, it reaches the right ventricle, and through the pulmonary valve, the pulmonary artery, it is filtered in the alveoli of the lungs, and the oxygenated blood reaches the left atrium, then through the mitral valve into the left ventricle and through the aortic valve into the aorta, and then it is supplied to the rest of the body. Now we look at a mitral valve. This is a normal mitral valve that is closed. This is a closed mitral valve in mitral regurgitation. So the valve cannot close properly in mitral regurgitation. Now, whenever there is contraction of the left ventricle, normally the blood should flow into the aorta through the aortic valve. But because here the mitral valve is incompetent, the blood will also flow back into the left atrium through the mitral valve when there is left ventricular contraction. So we'll represent this backflow of blood in green color, which is abnormal. Now the left atrium receives the regurgitant jet as well. In the next cycle, the left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the pulmonary vein, which is represented again in red color. Then, from the left atrium to the left ventricle, the regurgitant jet as well as the blood coming from the pulmonary vein both reach into the left ventricle, thereby leading to left ventricular volume overload. So, this is the most important thing that happens in mitral regurgitation. Now, when there is a volume overload in the initial stages, the heart will try to compensate by increasing the force of contraction. So, there is increased contraction, thereby the cardiac output is maintained to normal. But what happens in the later stages is that the left ventricle gets dilated because of this volume overload and the contractions become weak. So there is a systolic dysfunction. Now, once the left ventricle cannot contract properly, the cardiac output is decreased and also the regurgitant jet is increased. So, decreased cardiac output and increased backflow occur in the later stages of mitral regurgitation. So, decreased cardiac output causes fatigue and dyspnea, and increased backflow causes pulmonary congestion, leading to orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, cough, hemoptysis, and further backflow of blood into the right ventricle causes right ventricular dysfunction, leading to edema, ascites, and raised JVP. So, in the later stages, there is systolic dysfunction, which causes decreased cardiac output as well as increased in the backflow that produces the symptoms of mitral regurgitation. So, one point to remember here is in the initial stages of mitral regurgitation, the patient is completely asymptomatic because the cardiac output is maintained. But in the later stages, because of systolic dysfunction, the symptoms of mitral regurgitation occur. Let's compare a normal left ventricle. Suppose this is a dilated left ventricle. So, what happens in mitral regurgitation? Because of dilated left ventricle, the apex is shifted laterally. And also because of increased volume in the left ventricle, the apex is hyperdynamic on palpation. That means there is a lift in the apex which is sustained for less than 2/3 of the systole. Now let's suppose this is the left ventricle and the aorta that is opening out, and when there is a left ventricular systole, that is left ventricular contraction, blood flows into the aorta. And when there is an incompetent mitral valve, it also flows back into the left atrium, which is abnormal. So as long as there is systole, there is also backflow of blood into the left atrium, leading to an abnormal sound throughout the systole known as the pansystolic murmur. So pan means throughout. So throughout the systole, there is a murmur. This is known as a pansystolic murmur, or it is also known as a hollow systolic murmur. Now S1 is because of closure of mitral valves. But here, because of incompetent valves, the mitral valves do not close properly, so the S1 is diminished. Now closure of semilunar valves produces S2. In mitral regurgitation, the second heart sound is described to have a wide split. Now, what does a wide split S2 means? So, just for understanding, let's look at this diagram where the left ventricle opens into the aorta through the aortic valve and the right ventricle opens into the pulmonary artery through the pulmonary valve. So, this aortic valve and the pulmonary valves are the semilunar valves, and closure of these valves produces S2. So, normally what happens is the aortic valve closes earlier than the pulmonary valve, and thereby it causes a split of S2, which is appreciated during inspiration. In mitral regurgitation, as some amount of blood also goes into the left atrium during systole, the forward flow into the aorta is less, and so the aortic valve closes earlier than normal, and thereby the split increases. So here A2 occurs earlier than P2, thereby there is a wide split S2. So in mitral regurgitation, as there is backflow of blood, the flow through the aortic valve is less, so the aortic valve closes earlier than normal, causing a wide split S2. To represent the auscultatory findings, the S1 is diminished because the mitral valve cannot close properly. Then, as long as there is systole, there is a regurgitant jet that causes a pansystolic murmur, and as the aortic valve closes earlier than the pulmonary valve, there is a wide split S2. So diminished S1, then a pansystolic murmur, that is a murmur occurring throughout the systole, then a split S2 are the auscultatory findings of mitral regurgitation. So this pansystolic murmur is described as a blowing and a high pitch type of murmur, and it is best auscultated in the mitral area, and this mitral area corresponds to the left fifth intercostal space in the mid-clavicular line. So, important findings in mitral regurgitation include diminished S1, a pansystolic murmur, split S2, the apex being shifted laterally, and hyperdynamic apex on palpation. Now, in case the regurgitant jet is directed posteriorly, then the murmur also radiates to the axilla and to the back. And if the regurgitant jet is directed anteriorly, then the murmur radiates to the neck. Also in acute MR, what happens is the regurgitant jet, which is coming back into the left atrium, all of a sudden falls down into the left ventricle. A large volume of blood striking the wall of the left ventricle causes this third heart sound. So this third heart sound is also known as a ventricular gallop, also known as an early diastolic or a proto-diastolic gallop. So to represent this again in the auscultatory finding, we need to add S3 after the second heart sound. So after the diminished S1, there is a pansystolic murmur, and then there is a split S2, then large volume of blood which was in the left atrium because of regurgitation suddenly hitting the wall of a compliant left ventricle produces the sound S3. So coming to the causes of mitral regurgitation. Primary mitral regurgitation is because of structural deformity to the valve apparatus, and secondary mitral regurgitation is secondary to some left ventricular pathology. So looking at the valve apparatus, the base of the valve that supports the leaflets is known as the annulus. The flaps that prevent the backward flow of blood are the leaflets of valve, or also known as the cusps. The fibrous connective tissue that connects the valve to the papillary muscle is the chordae tendineae, and a papillary muscle prevents the prolapse or inversion of the valves during systole, and it is connected to the valves through the chordae tendineae. So these four together form the valve apparatus. Now we'll look at the primary mitral regurgitation. So there should be some abnormality in the valve apparatus. First cause is degeneration of the mitral valve, especially the myxomatous degeneration which is seen in the mitral valve prolapse. So this can be seen in conditions like Marfan syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Second, some congenital defects like cleft mitral valve, which can cause mitral regurgitation, or a double aurified mitral valve, or a parachute mitral valve. So these are some congenital conditions causing mitral regurgitation. Next is a rheumatic heart disease, which can damage the valve leaflets leading to mitral regurgitation. Now looking at the secondary mitral regurgitation, which is usually secondary to some left ventricular pathology like ischemic cardiomyopathy. So whenever there is ischemia, there is left ventricular remodeling. So in case the ischemia was in the region of the papillary muscle, this left ventricular remodeling causes displacement of the papillary muscle that will pull the valve leaflet, giving space to cause a mitral regurgitation. Next is a dilated cardiomyopathy. So normally the mitral valve closes like this, and in case the left ventricle is dilated, the annulus also gets dilated, producing a way through which mitral regurgitation can occur. Next is a papillary muscle rupture. So rupture of papillary muscle can cause severe acute mitral regurgitation because once it is broken, it cannot hold the valve properly, thereby leading to mitral regurgitation. Then hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Here there is hypertrophy of the papillary muscle, which can pull the leaflets of valve, thereby creating way for mitral regurgitation. So this is a hypertrophied myocardium, and these are the hypertrophied papillae that are pulling the valve leaflets, producing way for mitral regurgitation. So these are the causes of mitral regurgitation. The primary causes include degenerations causing mitral valve prolapse, congenital causes, and rheumatic heart disease. And the secondary causes include ischemic cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, papillary muscle rupture, and hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Now we'll look at the diagnosis of mitral regurgitation. So here, as already discussed, the symptoms of mitral regurgitation include the symptoms of decreased cardiac output like fatigue, shortness of breath on exertion, and symptoms of increased backflow like orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, raised JVP, edema, ascites. And signs of mitral regurgitation include low pulse volume, a wide pulse pressure, a hollow systolic or a pansystolic murmur, and the apex is heaving type and it is displaced laterally. Now, ECG findings may include findings that show left atrial enlargement because of the regurgitant volume, which can be seen in lead 2 as a bifid P wave known as P mitral, or also in the lead V1 there is a biphasic P wave. Echo is the best test to diagnose any valvular lesion including this mitral regurgitation. And then brain natriuretic peptide is a substance that is released from the myocytes in response to stress. The amount of BNP directly correlates with the severity of mitral regurgitation, and so it can be used as a prognostic marker in mitral regurgitation. So this is about the diagnosis of mitral regurgitation. Now coming to the treatment. So it's very obvious that an incompetent valve cannot be treated by any medicine. So surgical repair is the best in mitral regurgitation. So if the patient is asymptomatic, normotensive, with an ejection fraction of more than 60, that means a normal systolic function, then no treatment is needed. Regular follow-ups are enough. If the patient is asymptomatic, hypertensive with normal ejection fraction, then antihypertensives are needed. That may include beta blockers or ACE inhibitors. And if the patient is symptomatic, the best treatment is to go for a surgical repair. But still, if the patient is not fit for surgery, then treat like heart failure with a reduced ejection fraction. Drugs like ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, and diuretics are used, and diuretics have shown more promising results. Now, coming to the surgical management of mitral regurgitation. So, there are three options: either a surgical repair, that means open heart surgery with a repair, or surgical mitral valve replacement, or a transcatheter mitral valve repair. So, a transcatheter repair is done only for those patients who are not fit for an open surgery. In this, a catheter is introduced usually through the femoral vein. It is taken up to the mitral valve and then the valve leaflets are clipped. This is known as a transcatheter edge to edge repair. So, this is the transcatheter clip that is taken up to the mitral valve and then the valve is clipped. Thereby, the regurgitant fluid is prevented from coming back. Surgical repair is done when the mitral valve leaflets or the chordae tendineae have a limited damage. Here we are just repairing the mitral valve, so it preserves the natural valve and the chordae tendineae. And there is a dictum, more the natural valve, better the results. And that is why surgical repair is the treatment of choice in mitral regurgitation. Now coming to replacement of this mitral valve, it is done only if there is severe damage to mitral valve or severe calcification or an infection that can very rapidly spread to whole of the valve apparatus. Now mitral valve can be replaced either by a tissue valve or by a mechanical valve. So both have disadvantages. Tissue valve has a shorter lifespan of about 10 years, so it requires resurgery after 10 years. Again, the valve has to be replaced. Mechanical valve require lifetime treatment with anticoagulants. So these are the two drawbacks of mitral valve replacement. So that is why, as compared to mitral valve replacement, mitral valve repair is better because firstly it preserves the natural valve, thereby the results are better, and these drawbacks which are caused by the mitral valve replacement like repeat valve surgery or use of anticoagulants are not needed. So this is the complete picture, starting from the causes of mitral regurgitation, the pathogenesis, the diagnosis, and finally the treatment of mitral regurgitation. So I really hope it was useful to all of you. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. Let's meet again with another new topic. Till then, just take care, be happy, and stay safe.